one button done up.
I'm very relaxed, as you can tell. I've been stretching.
Ready to roll, mate.
Yeah, it's been a trip out here. We've only got 50 minutes for this one because we're going to go get assessed and our postures. So, but you're on because, I mean, we all put it together, so I guess we say thanks to you, I suppose, because
awesome.
putting it all together, man, and I think this is something that everyone sort of wants to get behind, and I think you're the dude, being who you are and where you come from, to piece it all together and they sort of explain your sort of version of yoga, I suppose.
Just cut the fat, really. So, this is an Australian first and Australian history, really. So, we applied for several grants to put together a teacher training that we wanted to basically hit the criteria of becoming a yoga teacher, but streamlined, cutting the fat and dropping all the woo-woo. A lot of promises as you get with the working in the ESO sort of area, and didn't really follow through. So repeat that process a few more times, and then we got a small grant which would enable 12 pers to come on this course and then walk away with a teacher training qualification. So Frontline Yoga, which is another organisation which we're on at the moment, specialise in the yang style, the more active style of yoga that is commonly portrayed on Instagram and other platforms and social media. And ours is more the introspective style of yoga. So we're doing this intensive module here, as you guys know, and then you'll be basically going to the advanced models and the yin aspect post the course. It's going to be completely different from the setup that's here. But Beck Passy, that we were talking about, she was instrumental in putting the grant forward and getting us here to this.
Because that is a fucking process, isn't it?
It is. And when I was teaching up to 25 classes a week, and if you can even just think of what entails for 25 classes a week, so roughly 1,400K in the car a week back in Melbourne, and teaching at a number of locations, and particularly to the veteran first responder or emergency services community. And I just didn't have the time to do the administration that was required. I've been working in the business, not necessarily on the business, because it's just exploded. It's exploded with the most unlikely candidates to do yoga and meditation, and that's what I specialize in. So that's what Blind Tiger is about, is literally learning techniques and ways to be complementary to their lifestyle. So whether you're a shooter or you're a professional athlete, whatever style of training that you're doing, our method and delivery of meditation and yoga is so bloke friendly, as you've all experienced, and it literally gets to the point. It doesn't have any extra fluff or anything like that on it. It's very streamlined.
Yeah, there's no bullshit. All the woo-woo's gone, hey. And then for the boys to work on their performance and stretching and make some space in their mind, yeah, and
definitely,
and really work on holding those stretches for long periods of time, which is what gives us back our mobility, hey?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we specialize in really hitting home the appropriate depth, resolving to remain still for a longer period of time, that time over intensity. So most of the activities that we've done in our careers or our extracurricular activities and sports and all that sort of stuff, it's all been yang in nature. It's been hard-hitting stuff, usually contact sports for most of the grunts that are listening, etc. And not learning the other side of the coin, which is how to switch off, how to recover at a better rate, how to manage what they're going through, whether they already have pre-existing injuries or they're using it for injury prevention or peak performance. And people might be listening at home going, well, how does yoga doing that achieve those things? Well, it is what I said about the depth, stillness, and time. So we work with the joints, the ligaments, the bones, and the fascia, the connective tissue in the body. So there's a lot of science backing what we're doing. And I think that's where a lot of guys get some pushback, because they're like, I can't relate to it because it's too out there. There's not enough explanation of what I'm doing and why. And our style is that we've gone in and we've done that. So we offer a practice to people that would never walk into a studio, would never walk into the onto
Well,
mat.
there's guys sitting here that are the same, you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't You go in and suffer through a more commercialized, like Lululemon chicks in trying to get Insta famous to see the benefits, but have to suffer through the other people in that particular demographic. And here,
definitely.
even all your lessons and that, it's all been studying in America. It's all like anatomy lessons and because you've been extensive study in America, haven't you?
Study all around the world, really, going to workshops, teacher trainings, all that sort of stuff. Got some pretty high caliber mentors as well, and we've had a lot of success in the States as well with what we're doing with Blind Tiger. The US seems to be so far ahead of the game with all modalities, really, and I believe that Australia does have the mindset to be adaptive to these practices like we're offering. But we just don't have the financial backing to really get these programs off the ground. So most of my own savings has gone into serving this to the veteran community. And, you know, a lot of people would go, what are you doing? But when you meet a Vietnam veteran that goes, mate, I had the first full night's sleep in 8 to 10 years since after doing your class, you know, I'll be back next week. And like, it's been worth it.
It's done,
man.
tick, isn't it?
You know, if I can cut through to those guys that have seen and done a fair amount of crap, and they get a positive result from it, and it comes back to expectation management when we're talking about results in anything. People think, oh, you know, I might do 3 or 4 yoga sessions and then I'm going to be a jet and I'm going to be doing all these advanced asana, all these poses. And the reality is that we don't focus on any of that stuff. We do yoga to not learn to stand on your head, it's to get your head out of your ass. So our approach clashes with what social media sort of pictures it to be. Our approach to meditation is reality-based techniques, breathing techniques, which I don't think anyone can really argue against the benefits of breathing techniques and reality-based meditation practices.
But, I mean, that's how it has to be, but because it's not just AJs and like first responders, but like blue-collar dudes are not going into yoga studios because, one, they think it's all woo-woo and hippie and you got to do handstands and wear Birkenstocks. Keegan.
Whoa. That was a personal attack.
And that was what I mean. Like I didn't want to do yoga when it was all just super skinny chicks doing like turning themselves into pretzels. And then I went one day. I'm like, all right, I need to do way more stretching. I need to go to yoga. A mate of mine's sister started a yoga studio. I'm like, I'll go there. And even like walking into the room, the first day there, I was intimidated as fuck because it was a room full of chicks. Mm-hmm. They weren't all super stretchy, but I mean, it's an insecurity thing going, most of our kind of demographic of dudes want to be good at everything, and we're good at lifting weights and throwing footies around and doing monkey stuff. You go in a room where you're the shittest person in the room, so it's hard. That becomes a friction point to stop young diggers or young blue-collar dudes from getting into yoga. And that's why something like this, where it's like, it's run by knuckle-dragging monkeys who aren't super flexible but are willing to learn it and take other people on the ride with them. I think that's why it's having so much success, and that's what it's going to in the future. Yeah,
I 100% agree, man. I mean, I remember when I went into a yoga studio and there was no way that I was telling anyone. Like, I had the hoodie on sort of thing, like, oh, crap. I saw an opportunity that was preventing itself. So I got so far with my injury recovery from service-related injuries and wear and tear from my body. 10 years as a grunt, you know, is going to give you some niggles and itches, if you will. And I saw a 20 days for $20. And I was just like, you know what have I got to lose? If they're saying that I've reached my maximum range of motion through conventional methods that have been given to me, I need to take it upon myself to look outside the box. And this is what I see where a lot of people are failing with their own progression and growth as a human being, is that they only take what's given to them on a plate. And not enough people are stepping out and going, you know what, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work, no worries. But they go, I tried it, it was crap, and then they dismiss it. Whereas I've never had, so we've taught to 10,168 veterans.
That's fucking awesome.
And that started from just myself and then my partner, then Ross Walker, and then Amy Livingston. So we've got a team of 4, and I'm the only full-time staff member with Blind Tiger. And 10 teaching to US veterans, etc., overseas, and meeting them on common ground. Meeting them on common ground with packets of information that they can actually relate to. So, yeah, I get it, man. I really do get it. And I constantly get it all the time when people say, oh, you're a yoga teacher, and they have a chuckle and laugh. And I laugh with them half the time. I'm just like, if you think that because I'm a bigger frame lad, ex-rugby player and grunt, that I can't do yoga, your whole idea of what yoga is distorted. You've taken a picture or off Google or social media of what yoga is, and you've confused that with what yoga is.
Or social media has just hijacked yoga as an incorporate, like just mung beans walking around with like Birkenstocks. And
you're wearing fucking Marley beads, dude.
Yeah, dude, but that's because I'm spiritual. Whoa. Yeah, I just think people just jump on things so they can be different, and I don't know about. I don't think I'm ever going to need in my day-to-day life to be able to do a headstand, ever.
And that's okay. This is the point that people got to take home, is that a lot of people aren't going to be able to do a lot of the poses, but that's completely fine. I've streamlined the whole process and practice down to intention and attention. What is the point of the pose? What are you trying to target? And teaching people how to bring their focus and their attention to it. It's so streamlined. It's taking a broader context and an understanding of anatomy and physiology and streamlining the process into such small packets of information, and then you start building on that platform as the student starts practicing more and more.
So what's your ideal breakup? So for guys who are still serving, trying to fit in some yin yoga or some meditation, where would you like? What's your ideal? Would they do yin yoga in the morning, or would they do it in the evenings after work? When would you try and get them to?
So I would basically.
Sorry, mate. I'm just trying to bloody ball bag on the lawnmower. Fuck off half an hour.
He's having a good time though. So yeah, he's happy.
He's on a yoga retreat.
He's always mate.
He lives on a yoga retreat and doesn't have to pay tax, so he's pretty stoked. So to answer your question, there is no best time for someone to practice. It's going to be completely based on the individual schedule. And that's what I love about the practice, is that you can do it in the morning, you can do it in the night, whatever, post-flying, pre-flying, post-training, pre-training, etc. I've never met anyone in yin yoga that's hurt themselves. Meditation, expectation management, small chunks, small snippets of time. So the way that I explain to people after they've practiced, if they're maybe a bit frustrated that they didn't get to this level of they thought that they would be able to get to, is I say, if you can take 1 minute away from that practice, that was a win. Start small and then just go, you build upon that. Because if you're getting these huge benefits straight away, they might sort of plateau, like any style of training, etc. And then people get jaded. People get hurt in other styles of yoga because their ego gets in the way, and they're like, I need to push myself to get to a place that my body will never take me. And the lack of understanding of what your body can and can't do. I mean, we've gone through a range of anatomy lessons and breaking down skeletal variation, etc. Why our bodies move a certain way and why they don't. And after you see that from a science-based evidence, you kind of can't really argue it. We had no one argue what I was presenting in the classes.
So can you talk about skeletal variation for a couple of minutes, like just so?
Yeah, sure. So skeletal variation is every single person on the planet has skeletal variation. This idea that there is a perfect body doesn't exist. When we see a skeleton in a lab and it looks a particular way, or we look at it on charts, etc., we're just getting a broad picture, a broad snapshot of how that particular skeleton looks. Now, if we start going into wet labs and we start going into dissections, etc., and we start taking bodies apart, which I've thoroughly enjoyed doing. In
a lab.
In a lab.
Background context for that.
That footage on the hard drive will be saved for another time. So it's almost, think of a fingerprint. Every single person has a different degree of range of motion, and it is completely coming back to the shape of their bones. Their bones are forming all the way up until they're roughly 21 we start off with around 270 or so bones in the body, and when we get around about 21, they're roughly 207, give or take. But the repetitive movements that we do, especially in those younger ages, some people would argue that 21 is pushed to 25. I personally believe that, but I can't really say that in an open forum because, like I've just done, because it's still, most scientists believe it's around the 21. But like everything evolving in science, you know, there is adjustments that they make. So not only do the depth of your hip sockets vary from person A to B, C, D, all through to Z, they grow in a certain way. The stress that you put them under, they have different degrees of torsion. So the movement of your humerus, the movement of your femur, the orientation of your pelvis and your hips are probably some of the most fundamental aspects when looking at what the human body can or can't do. And I look back at my time in the military and certain activities that we were doing on repetition while our bones were still forming, because I got in at a pretty young age.
Yes, 17, Singleton, just driving people to do 45K pack marches.
Yeah, so like you've got a 17-year-old and he's humping mortar gear around, you know, and what pressure that's putting on his spine, etc. But also what repetitive movements that he's doing frequently that can create this stress on the body. And it's well documented. It's proven. We can't deny it. And for those of you that are listening at home, we had a series of pictures of different people's bodies displaying the different ranges of motion of flexion, extension, internal and external rotation, their abduction and adduction ranges of motion, etc. And we did those movement-based tests on each person after seeing the science of, well, this is how people's bones are uniquely different. And as far as I know, well, no one said to my face that they disagree with anything that was taught.
No, I couldn't believe it. Even when you were talking about you saw the photos of the hip angle of some of the joints, how it would go into the socket, something like 90 degrees, and how that would have an effect on pulling, walking or moving, and then normal. And it was unbelievable to see the visual, actual manifestation of that.
And I think that's what a lot of people need in Western culture, is that they need to see it for themselves. Or how I like to explain the practice of what we deliver is that it's a food that you haven't tasted before. You've got to taste it to experience it. And a poorly trained teacher that doesn't understand how to get that information across is really detrimental to that person practicing. Now, if we look at the skeletal variation of why your body can and can't go into certain poses and accept that, let's look at strength and conditioning training. Let's look at what we've done in the military. Let's look at what we've done in our sporting activities, etc., shooting styles, etc. And you look at activities that you had to move a certain way to achieve the result, and then you look at how your body can and cannot move, or what's causing pain and discomfort in the body. And you've probably even thought about it yourself, like how I've lifted a weight, you know. Maybe I did need to change the orientation of my stance, or I do now because I've seen that, etc. It just changes. It's a game changer. It's ultimately a game changer.
Yeah, I like the changing the stance. Even some of the term that we spoke about, doing some yoga poses, and even just some of the forward bends when they're talking about shifting your weight, feeling your weight through either your ball or your foot. And that what is it called?
Proprioception.
Proprioception, and knowing where your body is and how it is and how it's, you know. And that really helped me because I used to do like bent over rows. I was like, fuck I'm like, nah, my back's straight. I'm bending through my knees. Like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? My back's getting cooked. And then even for those forward bends, I was like, the fuck is going on? Someone's like, you got too much weight through your back of your heels. You need to spread it through front and back. And I was like, and the weight just went. And I was like, fuck. 34 years, and I finally figured out how to bend over. Like retard.
Same with, mate, doing the rocking and forward when you're going up in the tree. Like, Cobe's helped me with this overseas too, but started to pull weight through the balls because I've got flat feet, mate. Mm-hmm. Flat feet, when my ankles roll in and my knees are rolling in, and everything over 34 years of being an idiot is getting fucked up. But now just rolling around on your feet and coming up on one foot, I'm starting to build an arch in my foot again, and that just automatically realigns your knees. Hips aren't there yet, but they'll get there. But yeah, fuck, it makes a difference.
Oh, massive. And see, this is what's funny when people go, I'm too stiff to do yoga. it cracks me up. So I'm just like, my mind's too busy to meditate. And I always say, like, you're too hungry to eat, you're too tired to sleep, or you're too dirty to take a shower. Like, that argument in itself is why you do those practices. If I was running a team or a section and someone had a weakness, what do? You train them up to become stronger in that area, or you train the team in a way that will complement that weakness. And it's the same application in this particular style of yoga, is that cut out all the bullshit, know the intention and attention, write out what they're doing, why, or explain to them what they're doing and why. And then we start focusing on a skill set that we kind of really push to the side in not only Western culture, but it's a bit of a hard topic to relate to veterans, which I think I've nailed with over 10,000 veterans I've taught to. And from that figure, I just need to reiterate that 82% of those numbers are coming back. When you think of that figure and you just go...
Yeah, they're not walking in and going, fuck this, man.
And then walk out.
Yep.
We've only had two people go, and both of them came back about 3 months later. They just weren't ready for it. And...
sorry to cut in. Here's something we need to say out loud while this camera's going, right? How long have you been doing it?
I've been doing yoga for 10 years and meditation for 20.
Tiger, with to get those 10,000 veterans?
3 years.
So 3 years.
No funding.
You got 10,000. Well, that's what I was getting at. 3 years, 10,000 veterans coming through your doors, 80%
82.
return rate, 82% return rate, and it's all self-funded.
Correct.
I'm fucking lining this out like deliberately, because we're starting to get people from Open Arms watching this, and we're starting to get a few people from different RSLs watching this. And they are screaming out for ways to help veterans, but there's just fucking so much noise out there that the little people that have had to self-fund it, like we're the same, we had to fucking fund everything that we've been doing, but we're slowly getting a foot in the door. And there is going to be people from different RSLs and stuff watching it. They need to know that, because, I was in a meeting with RSL, with another organisation that's pitching to an RSL a couple of weeks ago, and they were pitching success stats of 100 people over 3 years. That's fucking good. Any amount of veterans you can help over 3 years, fantastic. But they're getting a fuckload of money, right? And you got a dude who's self-funded with no money, helping like 10,000 people in 3 years. That's something that people need to start paying attention to.
Yeah, look, it's we put a post on Instagram up about it, but that was our benchmark, or that was my ideal benchmark when I first started this, was in 5 years, how good would it be to hit 10,000? It wasn't even something that I said, I'm going to set this in motion to get to that. I was like, okay, let's let the practice just evolve and let people start experiencing it, and let's just see what happens. And more people are coming back, and more people are coming back. It's a hard sell. It's a hard sell for people to go, all right, well, I'm going to go give yoga a try with this guy at the RSL or whatever. And then they come along and they go, oh, shit, he didn't talk to me like I was a victim. He didn't talk to me like I was broken. He literally just gave me the space and the tools to be able to switch off.
Didn't give you your trigger warnings and your fucking... I can't do it. I want to talk about this as well. I'm a massive believer. All the boys have got issues, even the boys that don't get out or don't get to go overseas. And this is what was set up for for everyone. This is an inclusive charity. The only reason we keep getting shooters, guys who've gone overseas and got into the shit, is because they've also had dramas, and they've also come out of that for whatever they were. Maybe it wasn't overseas related, maybe it was pre or post, or maybe it was a combination. But they've all moved forward. They've all found a way and done it the wrong way sometimes, the slow way, but they've all got there. And using that as instructor credibility or a credible human being to tell them, like, we are doing this and no one digs, hi guys, so we're just going to start yoga, and if you get triggered, I'm leaving the fucking room.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Well, ultimately, it's knowing your audience. Like, it's exactly that. And just to go back to what you were saying before, Adrian, about getting to those numbers with no support and people listening, I find that a lot of the veteran community want to be seen to be helping rather than actually helping. Yeah. I know that's going to ruffle some feathers out there, and if your feathers are
Mate, fucking
ruffled,
feathers
it's
need to be
because of a
ruffled.
reason.
Yeah, exactly. There's no one out
Deep
there with a
look into
clean
the camera
conscience
there.
that's going to feel that's going to get their feathers ruffled by that.
Exactly. So when I looked at initially teaching, etc., I was just like, "Oh, how am I going to actually be able to teach to a version of myself?" You know, and I looked at what I needed to cut out, what I need to emphasize, etc. And with ex-service organizations out there going, "Hey, look, you know, I wanted to, let's try this or let's try that." They might just employ a yoga teacher that's Joe Blogs off the street. And that's cool, no worries. I'm all for that. I'm all for people practicing whatever. But unless you know your target audience and how to get to them, the instructor credibility of who they are as a person and their relationship to them as well, that's a huge one. If you don't know how to relate to these members, sorry, you need to step down. Why? Is because you're just going to turn that person off that particular practice.
Yep.
So,
Like that's what I'm saying. You get some broken old bloke or broken young kid. Maybe you didn't even deploy. Did 4 years, got out of the army, got injured.
yeah.
Goes to do yoga. Goes to do an asana yoga, like a bloody yang yoga.
Yep.
Can't hit any of the postures. He's fucking sore and broken. He's like, well, that's fucking shit. I'm sorer now. Than
And
I
then you
was
get
when I
someone in it, uneducated, that says, oh, you know, just work on it. And they don't understand skeletal variation. So they push themselves further and go, just hang in there.
Yeah, and it's boys that will push themselves to hit postures,
Exactly.
and they're like, "I'm going to do this." And it's like, no, your bone is in the wrong direction, bro.
Exactly. So with the whole education process, we're not only teaching them how their bodies move, but we're a big problem that we have with members suffering from hypervigilance is their relationship, because someone said hypervigilance long term is bad. Yeah, look, I'm not disagreeing that. But with Blind Tiger, we're teaching them skills to turn that hypervigilance inwards to a positive tool to use. For instance, giving yourself an internal sit rep. How you're operating physically. How's the breath? How's the mind? Cool. Quick, efficient, no worries. Tailor it to your needs and your language, etc. And then roll on with it. Before, when you touched on about broken people, etc., coming back, our practice isn't just for people that have suffered injuries, it's for high-performing dudes as well. Now, I didn't do anything special in the military. Did a couple of tours to Iraq and Afghanistan, like most of us from our time period, but with service-related injuries, I had to get out. And that was really put on me. Like, that wasn't a choice. It's different. Even though I was done, that medical discharge was made up for me. Now, yeah, I went through a hard and difficult transition, like a lot of guys that get that thrown upon them rather than being a choice. But I didn't choose that to define my story or who I am as a person. I kept practicing because I was getting the benefits. I kept linking in with my treating specialists and professionals, and then started deepening my practice. And then I went and did deep sea commercial diving, playing around with underwater explosives and stuff. And people were like, "Oh, you're broken." I'm like, "I'm doing more hardcore stuff now than I was when I was in." And I'll just let that sink in for a moment. And people were saying, "Oh, you're broken." I'm like, "Who says I'm broken? I'm restricted to certain things, but that doesn't mean that I need to sit there and go, oh shit, play the story. I better go play the pokies and, drink a whole heap of piss and etc."
And it comes down, I think it's like that, because when you're in the Defence Force, you get a restriction, you get a chit. It is a piece of paper that says you cannot do, like you got a knee injury, you can't do lower body PT. It doesn't say you can do one-legged fucking like lunge. You can do stuff within it, like
there's always something you can do.
Yeah.
Always something you can do.
People have injuries, physical and mental, and that's a fucking physical. Well, they're both realistically physical, but nowhere in that does it say they're broken. As soon as you're broken's a mindset, mate. As soon as you say I'm broken, you are fucked.
100%. I felt like that was what was being presented to me. The chain of command that I was under at the time had a pretty stretched tempo, etc. And, a lot of things just weren't really tended to. But we've spoken about this before, about people only looking about what's presented to them. Now, when I was a soldier, and I can't speak for you guys because we're in different battalions, but when we were given a problem, it wasn't no wasn't an option. You had to find a solution. You had to come up with a way of achieving the task. Sometimes, no was what initially comes up. This isn't achievable. But you would sit there and you would brainstorm ways to get over it and ways to adapt. I see the practice and what we do is mobility adaptation, not only for the body, but for the mind. So a lot of people at home might be going, oh, look, or wherever they're listening to this going, I can't fucking get on board this or whatever. I'm like, if a 126 kilo rugby player can get into yoga and get benefits in their body and mind and quality of life back, give it a crack.
And I tell you what, because every one of the boys that's come on, so me, Adrian, Keegan, Dave Lee, even all the boys from the different veteran backgrounds, we were all apprehensive about yoga, doing yang yoga, and then we did your one class, that yin yoga class, and everyone's like, "Fucking boom, that's my jam."
Yeah,
everyone they could move, they were relaxed. It was sick.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Well, just imagine how you're going to feel when you do it in 3 months.
Yeah.
6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And I say this to people, and this is why people come back constantly. Because we are limited with our teachers and we are growing, we are expanding it as well. There's certain caveats on becoming a teacher under us. So we want to ensure that the quality is at a standard. And like all industries, the standard's not always what I would call a standard. Mm-hmm. And I think we could all agree in different disciplines as well. Mm. So in doing that, when I get to them to a certain point, I encourage them to go to other studios. I encourage them to go to other teachers, etc. If this is your jam, awesome. You're welcome back. You can stay here as long as you want. However, I encourage you to go find your thing. Find your little community and your groove. I don't mean, go wear the tie-dyed shirt and the drum circle and all that sort of stuff. But if that's your jam, freaking go for it. But the figures that we've got in the last 3 years is pure evidence that people are looking for alternative modalities to achieve a different outcome than what they've got presented to them.
Well, I just don't think there's a whole lot of, because, you get home from work, dudes, diggers, secos, stuff like that, they get home from work and they're like, oh, I'm going to have a couple of beers and play PlayStation or play the computer, whatever they're going to do. But they're fucking, that's not relaxing. They're like, whoa, they're abusing some 12-year-old that's kicking their ass at the game when they're 30, you know what I mean? They're like, I will find this kid. I'm going to find him. You're stressed out, man. That's not, but that yin was relaxed, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So learning those skills to go from that state of maybe hypervigilance or just switched on from your occupation or your life, really, those are the practices that are so important, which I wish I knew when I was playing rugby, when I was doing contact sports, but also when I was in the military. I was meditating in the military, but I kept it pretty quiet. Why? Is because not only was it for me, but I also didn't know how to explain it to the demographic at the time. And now I think I've got that nailed.
Yeah, yeah, you do.
So it took a long time, but now I look at it and I can't unsee it. I can't unsee physical movement now without looking at certain aspects and going, man, that person is actually starting the stage of hurting himself down the line because he's doing an activity that's not right for his or her body. Watching martial artists practice, spar, and even fight, I'm just like, oh man, if you had a chat to them, I don't know anything about fighting, or I've got very limited knowledge of fighting. However, a couple of movements in this way or that way is going to change the game. Now, when I was teaching over in Thailand at Tiger Muay Thai, catching up with Cobes, I went round till I looked at the yoga class that I was going to be teaching while I was there. The teacher that was there prior, maybe very small numbers, very, very small numbers. And I went around to the jiu-jitsu guys that were rolling, some of the guys at Muay Thai, etc., and just chatting to them about their training, how many hours that they were putting in. And I said, how much recovery do you do? And it was pretty limited. These are professional athletes. And I was like, the recovery time's, not as what I thought it would be. And I just said, you want to come to a recovery session tomorrow here at 10 o'clock? And I think I got maybe 16 or 20 of them to come along. And at the end of the practice, I was like, how is yoga and meditation? I'm like, fucking what? And this one guy was pretty pissed off, and he had a good laugh at the end of it. And he goes, I didn't know that was yoga and meditation. And I'm like, will you be back? And those numbers went up to like 100 the next day, just from those 16 to 20 guys going off and talking to people. That in itself, like when you see that the next day, you can't help but smile and just go, how fucking good's this? This is people that are trained to be warriors, yet they're also learning to be a monk on the side.
Yes, the warrior
The
monk.
warrior monk, you know. And one of the things that I've sort of looked at with a quite sort of open mind is people's connotation that you do yoga and you meditate, so therefore you're weak. Now, in my eyes, and from my life experience, I've found to be truly peaceful, you need to know how to fuck some shit up. Because if you don't, you're just harmless.
Yeah, it's just harmless.
Which is a big difference.
Yep.
Yin and yang, mate.
That's it. So you can be equal elements of warrior and equal parts peaceful, choosing when to explode and when not to explode. That's what yoga and meditation's one of many things that yoga and meditation's taught me.
That's right. It's like Jordan Peterson and this stuff. I got his book, the 12 steps to life, or I can't remember. It's an
Shout
audio.
out to Jordan.
12 rules.
Yeah,
12 rules.
shout out to Jordan. And he was infamous because he stood up to the freedom of speech and stuff like that. But his whole thing was he decided dissecting old religions and old philosophies, and that and he spoke about the yin and yang, and sitting in the middle, like life is suffering. You can't all be in the yin and you can't all be in the yang, so you can't always be one way or the other. You've got to find that middle ground where you can flow in between, but you're sitting in that suffering, not suffering, but hardship type stuff. Yeah, yeah, it was good.
Yeah,
Good to listen to.
Awesome. What's your experiences been on this training? I mean, not only is it an Australian first, but it's something that I would say that the men on this course, you wouldn't see. I see it because I teach to this demographic, but in a regular civilian studio, you're not going to see boys like 6 to 7 foot tall that love throwing weights around, meat-eating blokes come into an environment that's vegetarian menu, subjects that are a bit out there and left field, and some of them have gone beyond left field, as you guys can agree. But in the same sense, we know that this is to get the baseline of training. You know, we're not converting people to anything or any system or religion or belief system. It's just literally in looking at it from the other side and going, oh, wow, that's how these guys think. This is how they move and operate.
Yeah.
What's your experiences?
Oh, so, I mean, that's the only... If we came here and it wasn't run by Blind Tiger and then some parts of Frontline, and I just rocked up and I was going to do a Byron Bay yoga instructors course, I would have fucking been out of it in the first day, mate.
Yeah.
It needs to be like... I know there's a lot of people that are getting into yoga now that are like coming from a scientific background, but they're the people you have to have teaching the course.
Yeah.
Especially to our kind of dudes. If you get someone who's just up there teaching, it's fucking religion, mate. Like, let's call a spade. Traditional yoga, or the ideas, the philosophy behind it, is an ancient Indian religion, or pieces of it. And I know people say it's more spiritual than religious, but it's the fucking same thing. When you get in a room and you're told all these stories that came from a book that doesn't make a lot of sense in the modern world. But then we got a bit of that, and then we got people like yourself giving us the anatomy and the physiology of like what's happening to your body when you're doing this stuff, and where that links into these old religious or these old texts that have come through. That's when we're like, all right, fuck, we're just getting a bit of culture, whether or not we believe in it or not. That's cool, as long as someone's showing me the modern scientific approach as to why we're doing it, because that's what we need to walk away from here with. We need to walk away and go, all right, boys, we're doing some stretches, but then we're holding it in 5 to 10 minutes in one position, and at the end of them go, that was just fucking yin yoga, and this is why we're doing it. The whole way you're telling them the why, and like what body parts you're opening up, and all that kind of shit. Without that, I think we'd be fucked. I don't think I would have stayed here.
Awesome. Well, that's a great point, because look, yeah, as you said, you know, religious and spiritual practice, the way that my mind works and looks at the practice is that I immediately translate it in a practical application. So I drop all the religious and spiritual connotations of it and go back to the intention and how to bring your attention to it. I look at translating it to bite-sized information that people like myself and my peers can understand and comprehend. And I think that this is where a lot of people fail, is because they don't have that ability to translate that data. So for our practice, as I mentioned earlier, depth, stillness, and time. So we do a lot of movement, but we do fuck all stillness as soldiers and first responders and emergency services, etc. But with that depth, we know full intensity or none. And we're teaching them the Goldilocks position, sort of in between 30-40%. And we start from there and we build that platform. That 30-40% is always going to be fluctuating and changing dependent on various factors. But then knowing that it's time over intensity to get into this practice. It's not about busting your nut and getting stronger and faster and harder. It's about learning the other application of how can softness sometimes be the appropriate course of action. Now, softness isn't weakness. Softness is just another element of the training. Just as going into a training session, hard is important, the rest between sets sometimes is just as important, depending on what style you're training. But yeah, I agree. Sometimes you can come to these things and they just be too out there, and they might be too, you might even see as a frustrating or time-wasting experience.
What's
But
that
at the end of the
time
day,
wasting?
it's just, how do I translate this in a way that people, what's the practical application of it? Simple as that.
It's not time wasting, but it is. I mean, Jordan Peterson does it. We're going to keep bringing him up so that hopefully someone tags him in it and he watches it. And he's like, "Hey boys,"
I might send it
yes,
to him.
send it to him. But he's broken down a lot of like the ancient religious stories from all different religions, and made them relevant to what information we should be extracting out of it to modern day life. And that's what we're trying to. That's what has happened here. Thank fuck. Like they've given us the old Bhagavad Gita kind of stories and all the Sanskrit shit that we're trying to getting told to learn, but probably not going to learn. And then we've got other people coming in and making it relevant to today. And I'm like, I'm not super enlightened or woke yet, but I am trying to be open minded. And if I came here and people were telling like just the ancient stuff, like I said, I might have left earlier. I'd like to try and absorb it and try and figure out my own reasons why. But there is a lot of people in our demographic that wouldn't get that far. And it then becomes a friction point that says, no, if you're going to teach me all this old shit that I don't believe in, I'm not religious, I'm an atheist, whatever, we're going to fucking lose them. And the end state's not to teach young diggers how to be fucking, how to understand the Bhagavad Gita. It's about teaching young diggers that mindfulness and meditation is going to fucking potentially save their life or help them become optimized. So we've got to try and remove all those friction points and then maybe later on teach them this is where it came from, here's some history and some philosophy behind it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, not many people are in the early stages of their yoga practice and then come on to a teacher training. You know, the exposure of jumping in the deep end, you boys have definitely done it. How things are laid out and presented to you is everything. How everything is presented is so important because you can lose people just like that.
So the Marley bead stuff, right? Last night there was dudes. I spoke to Officer Marshy, and he come up at the end and he's like, "I fucking get it." We talk about combat shooting when they were talking about tactile perception and trying to drop our heart rate down below. It's like 115 to 145. You're in that zone where you're like anything above that, you're major muscle skills, major muscle movements. That's why we don't do fine joint manipulation. But like post contact, post stress, whatever you're doing, trying to do like concentrating and using your fine motor skills drops you back down into, you know, a lower heart rate, lowers your heart rate, and by reaffirmation of doing things. So constantly, it doesn't have to be the fucking beads. Guys tracing a ring around their keys in their hands, or like if they're doing it. But I mean, and so Marshy was against it or opposed to the whole, and then just someone just saying like, well, what about this? This is a real life application or practical sense.
Yeah.
bang, and he just go, fuck yeah. And instead of someone saying, look, you all the mantras and you woo woo and
It always goes back to application, man. How you intend to apply it as well. So a tool is only useful for that one job if that person knows how to use it appropriately. With the mala beads that we were doing last night in the meditation, the way that it went into was mentioning the religious origins of it, where it should have been, this is a tool and how you use it is going to be dependent on the job that you're doing. So for instance, instead of the older ways of using it as a prayer bead or using it as something for a mantra, I just use it for an inhalation, exhalation.
How long were we
Move
there?
to the next one.
We were there 10 minutes.
10 minutes, and it felt like 30 seconds.
Yep.
And I think because people were given the choice, now bring something that works for you into your awareness, steering away from the religious and the spiritual connotations, and just something that was a practical application for you at the time. So for me, it was towards the end of the night. I was just like, I'm just going to breathe. I see this, I use it as a tool. I'm not just going to breathe with it. So sometimes I use them in traffic when I'm sitting in Melbourne CBD traffic going absolutely nowhere. I'll just go, well, what's in my control right now? None of the external influences are in my control, but I can focus my breath somewhere. And I don't have to be cross-legged, wearing a sash and robes and shit and floating on a cloud. I can just be a guy that's going to my occupation or going to do whatever it is that I'm doing. So there's various tools through yoga and meditation that have a lot of sustenance and benefit to guys, but they just haven't found the appropriate way to apply it.
And we're going to. And that's why we're on the journey. Like, we're doing this, and then what are we doing? We're going into yin yoga with you.
We're going to be specializing in yin yoga. We're going to be going into the meditation aspects, and we're going to be going into the sleep-based meditation. So these are the stuff that's going to be on the app, the Swiss 8 app, and there'll be stuff that will be drip fed, through them over a course of time. And it's going to be so simple that it almost appears to be too easy. But simple isn't easy. And when you do the practice as well, you go, well, it's relatively simple. There is multiple layers to it, but it's about streamlining, making it efficient, making it direct. And then if you want to go into the philosophy, the spirituality, whatever from that, it's completely on you, man.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be facilitating that.
Man, it's been sick you coming out here and getting the opportunity with you, and thanks for the opportunity to come and you facilitating this. And
thanks, mate.
Go and check him out. If you'll be gyms, give yourself a plug, mate. Where you at?
Mate, we're all through Victoria. We don't advertise all the classes that we teach for security reasons. You can imagine if you start posting, hey, a bunch of soldiers and emergency services are going to be at this location, you get some interesting characters rock up. But we're working with Swiss 8 and development of their app releasing, so the yoga, meditation, etc. will be through there. And we'll be soon releasing trainings for other veterans and first responders to get on board to find this way that they can use this to enrich their lives and work towards those 8 principles that we're focused with helping Swiss 8 achieve their mission.
And well, before we end, we'll be rolling this stuff out this year, both in RSLs. There's a few in Sydney that we're starting to work with now, and any of the corporate stuff we do, any of the yoga and meditation-based shit that we're doing is either going to be Tristan or one of he's Blind Tiger qualified or trained instructors doing all. So there'll be there'll be no flower, tie-dyed shirt wearing shit. It will be high performance-based yoga and meditation.
That's it. And look, for those of you that might be skeptical, and look, when someone said to me that do yoga and meditation, I openly laughed at it. And then it was something that presented itself years later. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a crack. The fact that you can be open-minded to give it a crack means that you can give the same open-minded attitude to try something completely out of your comfort zone. So I'd like to just acknowledge all the guys that have come on this training to be a part of it and to take whatever tools that work for them. It's going to be interesting to see how they evolve with the further training and development, and seeing how they can use it and complement the rest of their training and life. So thanks for having us on, guys.